The East Indian city of Kolkata is one of the most polluted, congested and head-turning places in the world. Nearly 60 years after independence, small corners of Britain can still be found, in architecture and in its massive book fair. Last month, Scotland was given pride of place at the fair, the biggest in the world. 2 million people visited over 10 days, soaking up the best writing from a country that had a huge influence on the city. But away from the bustling fair, tucked in a quiet corner of the city, lies a forgotten slice of Scotland, 6 overgrown acres of Caledonia to be precise. This is the Scottish Cemetery. Established in 1820, it is the resting place for more than 1,500 Scots who lived and died in Calcutta, working as part of the civil service, in the military, or the East India Company. Headstones carrying names like McCracken, Sinclair, Kirkpatrick and Buchanan battle the rampant Bengali vegetation.
There's an atmosphere of, I suppose, a certain buoyancy in it, because here we have all these Scottish names. About 95% of the names on the stones are Scottish. And you look at the towns from which people came, and you'll see that here are people who may have started off their life in Dundee or Glasgow or one of the islands, for example, and died so far away from home in Calcutta. There's an immense amount of history there.
McCall Smith is a keen supporter of a campaign to restore the cemetery. Its care was abandoned in the 1950s.
The other thing which struck me was this extraordinary little bit of Calcutta, of greenery, in the middle of this teeming city. There don't appear to be many other green places in the immediate vicinity. It's overlooked by towering older houses in a state of bad repair themselves. So one could imagine that it could be really a rather useful green lung for people in the area once it was got under control. It's pretty derelict. The stones are all over the place at all sorts of angles. The trees have pushed up the stones. Obviously there's been vandalism, stones have been pushed over, and so that adds to the rather strong feeling of sadness and passage of time that one gets in the graveyard.
Last year, the Kolkata Scottish Heritage Trust was established. The Trust hopes to raise significant funds in Scotland and India to restore and uncover the graves, as well as the stories behind them.
The cemetery is very interesting. It contains the interment record of 1,600 people. And we've discovered Scots representing a whole strata of society are buried there. But possibly more interesting at the moment are the physical links that we're picking up with the current generation. We've discovered a family that have no fewer, I think, than 11 members of their family buried in the cemetery. We've managed to identify all those sites. We've discovered an elderly lady whose brother is buried in the cemetery, and she had no idea where he was buried in the late 1930s. We've been able to tell her, and she's delighted because it's closed a very long and wearisome chapter in her life. All sorts of stories like that are emerging at the moment, which is very exciting.
Until 8 months ago, there was no full-time caretaker. Now, renewed interest from Scotland and the local government means that there is money to protect the cemetery. It was not always this way.
Cemetery is very, very difficult to look after, especially we have a lot of these unwanted people. They come over, sometimes they make a hole in the wall. They have a lot of youngsters who just come in from the other side and they make a nuisance of themselves. They swipe or they rob all the marble, or if you do something good out here, they try and damage it or something. With the help of the corporation, the Calcutta police and of course some local people, we have got people out. See, at least now we're at peace.
But to keep the local flora and fauna at bay, more support from Scotland is needed.
This is something which is very specifically a monument in a sense to Scotland's involvement in the Indian subcontinent. It's a dramatic story, the story of Scottish administrators and officials and merchants, particularly obviously people involved in the jute industry here in Calcutta. And in a sense, it's rather sad, I think, that it's been allowed to decline. From the genealogical point of view, it would be very useful to have it all set back in order and available to people to come and pay their respects.
Until then, hundreds of Scottish stories lie beneath the vegetation. waiting to be retold.